What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Enduring Aesthetics Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel. This is my co-host, Clint.
Hey, guys.
So Clint actually posed a question to me the other day, which I thought was really interesting. It was, will we see an Indian win the Mr. Olympia contest anytime soon? And why don't we see more Indians in the IFBB right now? Clint, why don't you tell us kind of what made you think about that?
Sure. Seem to be hearing a lot about Indian bodybuilding recently, Instagram and things like that, and just decided to dive into it a little bit more, do some research on it, look at the history of bodybuilding in India, which is, kind of my specialty. And I found it was really interesting. We just did the podcast on Sandow a few weeks ago, and he actually visited India in 1904 and 1905. He spent several months there. He performed his strongman and posing act there, and wanted to teach his physical training system to the Indians. And he had great success there, and was actually surprised at how eager they were to develop his system and build their bodies. And many of them paid him enormous amounts of money at the time, and he wrote articles in several Indian newspapers. One of the things he wrote is that the native Indians have a fine foundation for the building of large physical men. So he's basically endorsing Indians and that they would be great bodybuilders. But it's just interesting that you've got the father of bodybuilding going down there and saying, hey, these people could be great bodybuilders in the future.
Have great potential, yeah.
Absolutely. They definitely have done a lot of the kind of strongman type stuff in India for centuries. And they're really big into wrestling. Wrestling's a really big sport there. So I can definitely see the potential, and I think we're starting to see a lot of Indian bodybuilders coming up, and I'm really interested to see what comes out of India. What's your take on it?
Well, I've noticed the same thing. I have looked back and seen, I've done my research in terms of like going back to all the Olympia contests and looking through the competitor lists and seeing where everybody's coming from, and kind of studied those lists a little bit for my own personal reference. And I've noticed that I haven't seen really any Indians on the Olympia stage outside of, and I'm going to butcher all the names today too as well. So, but outside of Premchand Degra, looks like it was the only Olympian that was actually Indian, which I thought was interesting because from my personal experience, just in gyms and seeing some of the guys that are amateurs or just a couple of the guys that are IFBB pros today, it looks like they've got, plenty of potential. The genetics seem to be there. Like you said, they're a little bit shorter, the average height there in India, and the Mr. Olympia contest is usually won by somebody that's 5'8", 5'9".
Right.
It seems like they're perfectly lined up for success in the sport, but also kind of seems like there's something, I don't know, either making it not accessible or that's just like holding Indians back maybe.
Do you think one of the things I found is that the prize money there right now is very low, that even when you win the top contest, you're only talking about a cash prize of around 10,000 American dollars. Do you think that the money involved with it might have something to do with why we haven't seen more more in it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that probably has a huge role to play. I can imagine the sponsorship opportunities there are a little bit lower than they might be in America or other countries,
Sure.
So like think about pumping iron, right? The shots where they have, the gym shots, they go in and everybody in that gym is like cream of the crop, top dogs, huge, right?
Right.
And it's, I think because all those guys are doing it out of the love for the sport, out of passion, So it was really kind of like a congregation of all the best guys, all the guys that are really actually doing it, you know?
Sure.
I think there's probably a group of guys really taking it seriously in India right now just because of those financial opportunities, like you said. You know, Arnold was laying brick with Franco, and Mike Katz was a substitute teacher or something, right?
Right. Yeah, and I think Arnold even said one time when he won the Mr. Olympia and they gave him the check, he even made some comment like, you know, this doesn't even pay for my steroids for a month or something like that.
Did he say that?
Yeah, supposedly he did. It was either, you know, it doesn't pay for my steroids for a month, or it doesn't pay for my food bill for a month. It was something along those lines. I thought it was steroids. It may have been his food bill. I don't know. But yeah, I think we could definitely see a correlation in Indian bodybuilding to what it was here in America back in the pumping iron age. You know, in the 70s, the golden era, guys were doing it not necessarily for the money, but for the love of it, like you were talking about. You know, and I'm sure that there's some sponsorship opportunities out there as well. I mean, India does have 4 times the population of the United States, so I think they could definitely sell some bodybuilding products out there. And I think that more people are getting interested in it and coming into it. And you told me the other day, right, that your largest percentage of your audience on Instagram is from India. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. It's actually 18%, which is the highest percentage of my followers come from India. And I think the highest percentage city is Mumbai. So definitely a lot of interest coming out of India. I haven't checked on YouTube yet, but I mean, Instagram seems to be heavily influenced by my Indian followers, at least.
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of where I got the whole idea for, you know, like what's going on with Indian bodybuilding. I mean, I being fairly new to Instagram myself, only been on it for several months now. I'm like the oldest young guy that you know. But I noticed, you know, looking for just accounts to follow, right? Outside of the usual ones that everybody follows, that there were a lot of Indian bodybuilders out there that really had fabulous physiques, you know, and I just wondered why I'd never heard of these guys, why, you know, we hadn't seen more of them. And it's interesting. But I got to think it's in the cards, man. I got to think that in the future we're going to see some of these guys. I mean, what are your thoughts? You think we're going to see more Indians enter the IFBB and eventually compete for the top title?
You know, I did notice a trend when I was doing research for this show in particular. It seemed to be that a lot of the, you know, like really in shape guys, for whatever reason, are competing in organizations outside of the IFBB. Now, I don't know if that means that like maybe the IFBB is not as big there as it is here. I mean, like obviously there's way more IFBB shows here than there are there, sure. But maybe the way that they regard the organizations are a little bit different, because I'm seeing a lot of guys in like the WBFF or, you know, these other organizations that might be like muscle models, fitness models, stuff like that. A lot of the top really in shape guys are competing in those organizations, and I'm curious to know why, because I would imagine it's pretty clear that the Mr. Olympia contest is the biggest contest in the world. You know what I mean?
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
So if you're going to be a bodybuilder and you're striving to be, you know, the best in your field, I would imagine that you would want to compete and head towards that title. But it looks like these guys are going towards the WBFF. I don't know if that's because there's more money to be made there, or if it's the way that they regard the organizations or not. But I thought that was interesting, that it seems like some of the top talent there from India is not competing in the IFBB, and I'm not sure why.
That's interesting.
Do you think they might view the IFBB any differently, or?
Well, I think maybe just the IFBB hasn't discovered India yet. I think that I think that the IFBB does do a show there, maybe 2 or 3, something like that. Mm-hmm. I don't think they're real.
There's a handful, but it's not a lot.
Yeah, I don't think they're real heavy in there yet. But I mean, just looking at the research that we've been doing, I gotta think that, you know, in the next several years that there will be. I mean, I think we already talked about, you know, India's got 4 times the population of the United States.
So the pool is huge.
The pool's huge. Also, they have the second most English speakers of any country other than the United States. I would think is number 1. So to me, that makes them more marketable here in the United States. So if we were to get an IFBB Mr. Olympia Indian, I would think that, you know, you could promote him just as well as you could promote, you know, Sean Roden or Phil Heath or any of those other guys.
Yeah.
I mean, also, I just thought of this right now. I mean, they've got a pretty big movie industry over there, right? Bollywood.
Yeah.
So you've got the potential to have like an Indian Arnold Schwarzenegger,
Yep.
you know, and an Indian Steve Reeves.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's great potential there. One thing that I put down here, and we've talked about this before, is I feel like a lot of really good potential bodybuilders are taken away from it by the NFL, the NBA, MLB here, just because especially if you're taller, right? You know, if you're 6 feet tall or taller, you know, you're a muscular guy, you weigh a good amount, you know, you're gonna play football or you're gonna play basketball, and you don't even have to be the best at that sport to, you know, easily clear $1 million a year. You know, with bodybuilding, we were talking about this too. With bodybuilding, you've got to be, you know, at the very top level to see numbers like that.
Yeah, and like even close to numbers like that, you have to be at the pinnacle, and not only the best of your sport, but you have to essentially be like a marketing guru too, because a lot of the money doesn't just come from the league paying you. You know, it's like you're getting it from sponsors, and then from like sponsored videos or photo shoots and stuff like that. So it's not like the model that you have in the NFL where the team buys you out and is going to automatically pay you $250,000 that year, even if you're trash.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So.
And I thought that was a really good theory as well, because I have noticed, you know, some of our Olympia champions that we have had were only bodybuilders because of some injury or something that happened in the past. Like Lee Haney is a great example of this. He was actually playing football first, but then got injured, could only stay in the gym, and realized, you know what, I think I'm going to go with bodybuilding because I'm pretty good at this and I like the gym. And I think that was the case also with Phil Heath.
Phil Heath, played basketball for the University of Denver, I think.
Yep. And he said at one point that he kind of realized, this isn't going to work out for me in basketball. I've got great genetics and I'm doing pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and see it through with bodybuilding, and, you know.
Yeah, I mean, these guys are really great competitors, and when you're told, when you're 21, 22 years old at the end of college, that's it, your competitive days are over, you're not going to the NBA. I think these guys look for something else, and bodybuilding's there. Yeah. So, but, you know, I mean, looking at the top sports in India, you know, cricket, field hockey, wrestling, things like that, I can't think that going professional in India in any of those sports is really going to pay top dollar. Right. Know? So because of that, because India doesn't really send a whole lot of athletes to the pro or sport organizations where there's potential to make a whole lot of money, I think that bodybuilding there is really going to explode here in the coming years, if it hasn't already. I mean, I feel like it's starting to right now. Again, just in my opinion, I think it's like the 70s were here to bodybuilding, and I think we both feel like, you know, the movie Pumping Iron is kind of the spark, right, that ignited the powder keg and kind of got people, you know, starting to come to the gym, and there was a huge explosion in the 80s for the fitness industry. And I think that India's there. I think it just needs a spark to you know, to really get things going over there. I don't know what it's going to be. Maybe it's going to take, you know, an Indian winning a really big bodybuilding contest or something like that to get the rest of the country really pumped about it and get them in gyms and working out and things like that.
I'm wondering.
One of the things.
Go ahead. I was just gonna say, I'm wondering if it's gonna take actual Indians becoming pro and then like going back and either giving back or kind of representing their country in that sense, you know, or if we're just on the cusp and it's just now picking up, and no matter what, it's inevitably just gonna blow up. Because I have seen like Jeremy Buendia, Kai Green, these guys that are top pros here have gone over to India to do like seminars and guest postings and stuff like that. And every single one that I have seen that has gone to India have said explicitly, like, this is the best response that I've ever gotten. These guys are crazy about bodybuilding. They absolutely love it. They go nuts when we come out on stage. So, I mean, it seems like there's a lot of interest and potential there, but I'm wondering if it's just like, maybe we need to give it time to grow, or it's going to take like an Indian Arnold. You know what I mean? Right.
Sure. Absolutely. One of the things I was wondering is, do you think their diet is holding them back a little bit? It seems like from everything I've been reading that, you know, the primary diet over there is typically vegetarian. So, I mean, you know, beans and vegetables are great and everything, but we know that you're not getting, you know, 200 grams of protein with that, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of something that I'd be interested in from an Indian bodybuilder is, how do you get your protein in? I mean, do you just do you take 5 or 6 protein shakes a day to do it? Yeah. So I mean, do you think that their diet could be holding them back a little bit from the top shows?
I think it could play a part. Absolutely. It's a little bit.
I mean,
I would say it's not quite as difficult for a vegetarian per se, because if you're vegetarian, you can still have things like eggs, you know.
Sure.
And you can
milk.
Yeah, exactly. And you can kind of play around with your meals in such a way to try and mimic that high protein ketogenic diet that most American bodybuilders are doing. I have noticed there's one professional bodybuilder that is open class that is strictly vegetarian. I believe he's the first IFBB Pro Indian that was able to turn pro in the IFBB, and first vegetarian, I guess, that was able to turn pro. I've noticed he's got a lot of size, he's got pretty good shape, but not quite the same level of conditioning that we see from Americans here. I'm wondering if maybe that is something that is holding them back from the highest ranks.
Yeah, so I was gonna tell you that, and I just found this out recently, is you know, a friend of the show's who we're gonna do, you know, a show on, maybe several in the coming months. Bill Pearl was actually doing some vegetarian bodybuilding.
Really?
So, and yeah, and I mean, he won 5 Mr. Universes, Mr. America. So,
but I think it can be done. Was he doing vegetarianism during that time while he's competing?
That I'm not sure of. I'd have to look that up. But I know that he has preached on how good the vegetarian diet is.
And he has maintained a level of physical fitness his whole life, right?
Right.
So it would be fair to say that he's kept his gains per se, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, he mainly does everything through his Facebook page these days, and he's getting up there in age, man. But you know, I've seen fairly recent pictures of him on Facebook, and he looks great. So
there's something to be said there, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think maybe with the diet being primarily vegetarian in India, maybe the guys are looking at American plans or American like diet plans or programs or whatever, and thinking like, you know, I can't do this, I can't eat beef, I can't, you know, do that kind of stuff, and maybe that's making them stray away from it. But at the same time, I see guys that are taking it to the even next extreme, like Nimai Delgado or Barney Duplessis, they're fully vegan, and Barney Duplessis has won the Mr. Universe in England, and Nimai Delgado is a professional IFBB physique competitor, and he looks phenomenal. So it can definitely be done on that
Sure.
diet, but I think it could hold them back that like it's not the norm by any means, and
Right.
there's not a lot of information out there relative to how much there is for like a ketogenic diet, you know. So it's more of like a hands-on, like I got to figure this out on my own if I want to do it vegetarian. You know what I mean?
Sure, you're right. There's not a whole lot of information out there on how to necessarily be a prize-winning bodybuilder on a vegetarian diet. But we do know it can be done.
Yep.
Not having done a vegetarian diet, I would think that you probably have to work twice as hard as someone that that can eat the chicken, the beef. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Again, I've never done it. But we know how important protein is to the muscle building process.
Yep.
And
I do think it's interesting though. When I was reading your book, right, the ratio of protein that Steve Reeves is doing is less.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
So maybe it's not necessarily the case that as a vegetarian you have to get that much protein. If you could follow the ratios that Steve Reeves is doing, it's probably much more attainable.
Sure. And I mean, Reeves, if he were around today, he'd be in, probably men's physique. I don't even know if he'd be big enough for classic physique per se.
Probably not.
Based on how he looked then, in the 40s.
He'd likely be more developed today. Yeah.
Right. So, maybe we'll see more Indians doing that, doing more men's physique, classic physique, maybe not necessarily
open
with the big boys. Yeah, exactly.
And honestly, I'd rather see that. I mean,
right.
I think you share my sentiment. Classic physique and physique seem to be a lot more interesting.
Absolutely.
Just because it's more relatable,
And having the vegetarian diet, I'm going to go on a limb here and say that Indians are probably more health conscious anyway. So, and we both know that men's physique and classic physique more aligns with the health aspect of bodybuilding.
Right.
But talking about all this, do you think you could see, an Indian winning the Mr. Olympia contest? And if you can, and what we know about the current state of bodybuilding in India, when do you think something like that might happen?
I'm hopeful. I think we could definitely see an Indian win Mr. Olympia in any division. I don't know how soon we're going to see it. I would say I would lean towards a little bit further out, maybe 5 to 10 years, closer to the 10-year mark.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that they're incredibly hungry over there. Just from what I've seen, I think they're the hungriest for bodybuilding of any country out there right now.
I would get behind that.
Even more so than America. I mean, here it's kind of a niche sport. There's a lot of followers, but again, we've got the big sports three over here. And in India, not so much. They've got their sports too, but I feel like bodybuilding could overtake those potentially, and I think it might in the next 10 years. I agree with you. We didn't talk about our predictions beforehand, but that's exactly what I was thinking when we first started, researching this and looking into it. I think about 10 years, give or take. It would not surprise me to see an Indian win Mr. Olympia, I think the IFBB would love for it to happen because, like I said, I think that they're very marketable. Whoever wins, probably going to speak English, probably going to be very marketable.
Yeah. It kind of plays into that like American dream story too. A lot of these guys are just coming out of modest means, and if you rise to the top in something like bodybuilding, it gives you that real like underdog story. You know what I mean? People eat that up.
Absolutely.
And I like the point that you made with bodybuilding being able to kind of surpass the major sports there right now. I do think it's possible that bodybuilding could surpass popularity of, say, cricket or, badminton, the stuff that they're doing over there. because it has a
Sure.
little bit, well, obviously I'm biased, but it seems like it has a little bit more of like a global appeal. And if it did, that would be really, really exciting. I mean, can you imagine if bodybuilding became the biggest sport in India, this country with a huge population, and then you have this huge pool of people, it's the most popular sport. I mean, they're just going to start dominating.
I could see it. I really could see that. But I mean, let's be honest. Here, there's no way that's happening in America. So
And I think it would take an enormous effort to try to even just go above the popularity of like baseball, or even like soccer is not even popular here, but I feel like it's getting a lot of play.
It's getting up there. Yeah,
for
sure.
It's getting a lot of play on these like networks like ESPN and stuff like that. You don't really see very much bodybuilding on there.
Right. And you think about it too, as a parent myself, raising your kids right now in America, unless you were a famous bodybuilder like Lee Labrada, you're probably not teaching your kids bodybuilding to become a bodybuilder. You're probably showing them things in the weight room. Hey, do this. This is going to help you with, you're showing it to them so that it's going to help them in football or basketball, or, you're teaching them how to become a football player, basketball player, baseball player. You're not teaching them growing up to be a bodybuilder. Again, unless you're Lee Labrada and you've got Hunter as your son, that's a rare bird for sure. But and in India, I could see it where it is like that eventually, where the sport becomes more popular, and they start from an early age, showing their kids bodybuilding, and this is what you need to do to become a top bodybuilder.
Yeah, that's an interesting point as well, because I mean, I don't think I had any friends. My parents certainly didn't ever even introduce bodybuilding to me. That was something that I stumbled onto by myself.
Yep,
it's
same
not
here.
at all the norm for bodybuilding to be introduced to somebody in grade school or anything like that.
Yep.
So that is an interesting point. Usually they're just kind of funneled straight into soccer, football, baseball, basketball, always those directions.
And if you were like me, and I think you were from the conversations we've had in the past, kind of what got you into it was Arnold, right? And seeing him in movies and saying, wow, that's a huge guy. How did he get that way? And then kind of through researching that, oh, well, he lifted weights. Well, how did he lift weights? And then you're discovering bodybuilding and starting to implement that on yourself a little bit, and looking into the diet and whatnot. And that's why I was saying earlier, maybe they've got a big movie industry out there, Bollywood, so maybe that's what it takes. Maybe it takes an Indian with a really great body like Arnold becoming a huge star over there, and then kids like us watch it and then decide that that's what they want to do.
Yeah, that could play a big role, because that seems to be every champion's origin story. It's like I saw Steve Reeves, I saw Arnold, and immediately decided I wanted to be just like that. Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah,
sure.
I can definitely see that playing a huge role as well.
All right.
So we were actually lucky enough to link up with Amit Roy, the Classic Division IFBB Pro. We asked him a couple of questions, and he was nice enough to send us some answers. Hey Amit, thanks for being with us today. So my first question is, who's regarded as the greatest Indian bodybuilder ever?
Hey, hi Daniel. I would say three. First is Amit Roy, who won Mr. Universe in 1951. He was the first Indian. And second is Manohar Aij, who won Mr. Universe again in 1952. And third is Premchand Degra, who won Mr. World in 1988. But I would say Premchand Degra. Why? There's a reason. Because he did win many shows, like I think 7 Asian Championship, and I think 9 times Mr. India. And he was the only bodybuilder from our country who actually invited in Olympia stage. So yeah, he got invited, and he competed in Olympia. He was the only Indian bodybuilder who stepped on Olympia stage. So I would say, of course, Manohar Aij is very famous, but I think Premchand Degra is the greatest ever because of his achievement.
Okay, awesome. My next question would be, how are Indian bodybuilders getting protein into their diets, since the diet there is primarily vegetarian?
Most of the Indians are vegetarian, but not bodybuilders. Bodybuilders eat meat, like I won't say beef because it's not allowed in our country. Like a cow, we don't actually kill the cow and eat cow. That's not in our religion. So of course, mm, Indian don't eat beef, but they eat meat like chicken, eggs, like they eat goat, lamb. We don't have turkey there, so of course there's no turkey, only chicken. They eat fish. So yeah, lots of, like, maybe one or two bodybuilders are vegetarian, like professionally. But who does professionally bodybuilding in India? Like, of course they're all amateurs, but they all eat meals. Only one bodybuilder, I think he's an IFBB Pro, Varinder Guman. He's a vegetarian bodybuilder. So you can say one or two people, like as in bodybuilding only you can find few people, not everybody. Most of the people who does bodybuilding, they eat meat.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. So, who is considered the father or founder of Indian bodybuilding?
Father of Indian bodybuilding, there's a little bit like confusion about, because on the net, because I don't know them personally, so on the internet they say it's like Manohar, like Manotosh Roy was the first founder, and he was the member of I think he was the president of IFBB Pro in Asian Championship, I guess. I'm not sure about this, but I think, according to me, Manohar Aich was the father of Indian bodybuilding, because he was the first who did many shows. Manotosh Rai did shows like Mr. Universe. After that, he did Indian, like maybe 6 or 7 times Mr. India. But after that, he didn't compete. He went for law, went for law school, and then did degree, and then opened many gyms for students and everything. He teach yoga and everything. But Manohar Aich, he did many shows, and he used to show his physique as a guest poser at the age of 94, until 94, and after that he didn't show. But he was very good until 96, and after that he never showed his physique to anybody, and he died, I think, 104 years in 2016. So I think, according to me, Manohar Aich is the father of Indian bodybuilding, who actually was the founder, basically.
Who are the top Indian bodybuilders in the world right now?
There are many top Indian bodybuilders right now, because bodybuilding actually growing really fast in India right now. So currently, I would say there's many few people are very famous, or they are very top-notch bodybuilder in India. Means they're not a professional. Some maybe few, like one or two. I think 1, 2, 3. Total 3 Indian guys are professional, and 1 girl is professional. 2 girls is professional right now in IFBB Pro, and rest is amateur. So Sunit Jadhav, he's an amateur. He's very good. Sangram Chogle is an amateur. He's really good. I don't know everybody's name because I don't live in India anymore. So I know them, but I don't know them personally. But I know Sangram Chogle and Sunit Jadhav, Suhas Kamkar, who just turned pro last year in Sheru Classic, as a bodybuilder. So now he's also pro. Virender Guman is also pro. He did many pro shows, but he didn't get succeed properly the way he wanted to be. So, but I don't know him personally. I know personally only Sangram Chogle, Sunit Jadhav, Suhas Kamkar, and there's a men's physique guy who are really famous in India right now, like Manoj Patil, Siddharth Jaiswal, and Junaid Kaliwala. He's a pro in men's physique right now, and these 2 guys, like Manoj Patil and Siddharth Jaiswal, these 2 are amateur. They compete in men's physique also, but Junaid Kaliwala is a professional now in men's physique. So these are famous names right now in India as a bodybuilder or men's physique. Classic physique, I really don't know who does classic physique in India right now. I bet there are many good guys are coming in classic physique also from India. So these are the famous name right now.
Do you think we'll see more Indian bodybuilders competing in the IFBB in the future?
Definitely, you will see more IFBB pros from India, because they are hungry. They're very hard worker. very simple, humble, down to earth people, and they just know one thing: hard working. So I would say definitely in future you will see many IFBB Pro from India who's gonna compete and win shows in IFBB Pro.
What's holding Indian bodybuilders back, if anything, and what are Indian bodybuilders' biggest strengths?
I think so. Anything holding back any Indian bodybuilder to be succeed? I think the major problem is the money, I guess. Otherwise, they're very hardworking. They have potentials. There are a lot of guys actually. I would say, they are better than me, but they don't have the opportunity, and they don't want to take a risk. Also, I would say, because when you try to do something different, there's a risk, and I think they just wanna like a very comfort zone. They don't want to get out of the zone to take a risk and do something different. Maybe that, but I would say money is the main reason. If it is if something they're holding back, but I don't think so. That's the problem right now. Maybe back then it was the problem, money was, but right now I don't see it. I think they're gonna come really soon, and you'll see many Indian bodybuilders competing in IFBB Pros. So nothing is holding back for sure. Biggest strength is they're hardworking. They're very hungry. They're very hard worker, very honest people. Because most of the bodybuilders are from middle class family, so they don't have money. So they just know one thing: if we, like, according to them, I was one of them before. Now I'm here, so it's different now. We think that if we don't have money, what we have only one thing: hardworking. We have only one thing: passions. We have only one thing, like mindset. So basically, I would say our strength is our mindset and hardworking. So that's gonna make any Indian, not just me, not just anybody else, any Indian can be really, really good in IFBB Pro stage and be succeeded.
Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this week's podcast. I want to give a big thank you to Amit Roy for giving us an interview this week and giving us some insight into Indian bodybuilders. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let us know who you think might be the next Indian Mr. Olympia. See you next week.